Motion to approve?
Councilmember Chambliss moves approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Wolf seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I think we ought to have an ordinance for the council that requires the titles of these to be much shorter because you really have to take a deep breath to get through it. Moving on to the non-consent business items, we have 5 items, and the first is the 2023-269 funding recommendations for the 2023 Local Housing Incentives Account Home Ownership Program. Ashleigh Johnson, welcome.
Hi, Councilmember Vento. Thank you. Perfect. All right, I am Ashleigh Johnson, the Program Manager of the Local Housing Incentives Account. And today we are presenting our homeownership and our multifamily recommendations. But this presentation specifically is for homeownership. So if council remembers, we gave this presentation back on November 20th, so last month. The vote was tabled and staff was asked to offer additional information on a number of important items that you have listed in your packet, so in a table in the back. Staff did the research for those items and prepared to come back after the holiday. However, in that process, we did notice an ineligible cost from the city of Minnetonka. So they adjusted their request, and we made that edit and reallocated the funds to the project that is below it. So I'll show you the table in a minute and how that looks, how that shakes out. So this is a overview of LCA and LHIA, reminding the council that it has a baseline funding of $1.5 million. It requires a dollar-for-dollar local match. So communities in the region that are LCA participating must also put in at least dollar-for-dollar match for any proposed projects. And then the pilot for this program launched last year in 2022. We hit the ground running to actually asked for it to be a program and then funded that program a couple months later, and for $2.9 million this year. So I am going to give another look at the applications, the scores, what funding recommendations that staff have made, and the project summaries. So this is a breakdown of LHIA available funds. We were allocated $5.4 million, $2.9 million in homeownership awards, and $2.5 million in multifamily rental awards. And that money is allocated in partnership with Minnesota Housing. And I'll talk about that in my next presentation. So a reminder of the homeownership priorities. Overall and in general, it is the priorities of this program is to propose development in places where it is hard to do so because there is a higher median home sales price than the region, more than $25,000 over the above regional average, and there are racial disparities. So we are considering both how applicants consider racial disparities in their applications to target those that have been historically disadvantaged from homeownership opportunities. So this is what our homeownership scoring looks like. First, determining if a proposal is eligible, either by the geographic choice criteria or by the racial equity criteria that I previously mentioned, and that was on the previous slide. We then rank applications based on 3 additional criteria: homeownership access, unique and contextual needs, and depth and length of affordability. So this is an extra layer of scoring to differentiate applications. All cities in the region or communities in the region are eligible to receive LHIA homeownership funding either by the geographic choice or the racial equity choice. If not the entire city, at least census tracts within each community. So here are the submitted applications. We received applications from the City of Golden Valley, St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnetonka, and Edina. The point distribution of these 8 projects that we received is in the middle. The highest scoring project at 45.5 points was from Golden Valley, and the lowest scoring 33.25, so a little bit about a 12-point range. $3.4 million requested from these projects and $2.9 million available. As you can see, staff today are not recommending funding the full $2.9 million, and that is because the scorer that is right under Refresh Minneapolis, which Ashleigh DuBose is here today, and even though there is no forum for her to speak, she has actually shared that she does want to be considered for the leftover funds. However, the City of Minneapolis, when we went back to the City of Minneapolis in this application process, they regarded that they have awarded Refresh Minneapolis and that project is fully funded. So for what it is that they are willing to give. So they are not continuing with that application for Refresh. And Ashleigh DuBose is here if council has any more questions directly for her. And I'll pause here for any questions from the council.
Anyone have questions? Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying to understand that thing about Minneapolis not wanting to participate, because if they've already put money towards the project, I guess I don't quite understand why they wouldn't want to consider that their match for this unless they believe that the money is not needed at all. Is that what they're saying?
Yes, so they made an award, I'm sorry, after Refresh Minneapolis applied. So Refresh Minneapolis had a very large gap. And then Minneapolis Homes made their awards and awarded Refresh Minneapolis additional funds, to which City of Minneapolis claims that there are no more hard costs to be covered. LHIA is only for hard costs.
Okay.
Ashleigh DuBose from Refresh Minneapolis has shared that she has hard costs. However, the City of Minneapolis has not confirmed that she actually has that gap in her hard costs. So what's happening is the City of Minneapolis must say, we have not fully funded this project. It does have a gap of about $30,000, which is what we're talking about here. And then we have a gap of, I think, $75,000. So that's what's happening is, yep, they said we made the award and there's no more soft costs. I mean, no more hard costs for LHIA to actually fill.
Ashleigh, or I'm sorry.
Ashleigh's right.
Yeah. I've got two Ashleighs here. It's kind of throwing me for a loop. It's like, you've raised your hand. If you'd like to comment, it needs to be limited. So if you'd like to comment briefly. Yes, please. And you can begin by identifying yourself.
Thank you, Ashleigh, for allowing me some time. My name is Ashleigh DuBose, and I am the owner and operator of Refresh Real Estate, LLC. I'm an emerging developer, and my endeavors is to create affordable housing in North Minneapolis, where I'm also a resident. I'm also in the 60% AMI income earning bracket myself, so I definitely empathize with the need for affordable housing, and this is one of the ways that I'm trying to both give back to my community and also earn an income for my family as well. So just to clarify, my application included the funds that the City of Minneapolis awarded me of $355,000 in project gap funds through the Minneapolis Homes project or program, and that's what I applied for. One of the projects that I'm proposing through the LHIA application is to develop 1600 Oliver Avenue North, which is a single family in North Minneapolis. And in addition to that, using the funds that would have been awarded if I were, successful in the application, using those funds to also develop an additional 3 properties, so a total of 4 properties, which is why you'll see a total number of homes proposed as 4. Now, I'm not sure where there was maybe a lapse in communication or understanding on the city's part, but I cannot create 4 units with just $439,999. So if you're wondering where the $439,999 is coming from as opposed to $355 in project gap funding, they wrote down the purchase price of Oliver Avenue, 1600 Oliver Avenue. So originally it was going to be $85,000. They wrote it down to $1, and I was advised to include that write down to increase my match amount so that I can apply for more money to go farther in the endeavor to create 4 units of affordable housing, ownership housing units. So that money, that number from the city has not changed between my application date and the original award recommendation date and even now. But I scored 1.25 points below the lowest scoring awarded or recommended application. So I'm right there at slot number 6. When I saw that the numbers had been moved around for other applications, for whatever reason, I said, I'd rather take something than nothing. Can I use the leftover amount, which is about, I believe, $74,966, which is the difference between the total recommended amount of $2,825,000, et cetera, and the available pot of $2.9 million. I was told, no, I cannot. And I said, well, I know I can't do 4 units with $74,900. I mean, any bit helps, but I still have a gap of $29,500 in hard costs that I have to fund myself. I could use $29,500 towards 1600 Oliver Avenue, and then I can acquire another unit, either a duplex or a single family, and create at least 1 or 2 more units of housing. And I was told again, no, we're sorry, it's too late in the process. The application cannot be changed. But I'm looking at the numbers moving around from the original recommendation to today, and so I see numbers moving and changing for other applications, and even a whopping $300,000 plus going to Edina, but all I'm asking is $74,966 to be able to make my project more feasible. Again, I'm not a high-income earner. It would help me out greatly. And I'm being told no, and honestly, it seems like a pointing of the fingers between the city and between LHIA. I'm sure that the intentions are well, but there's a lapse in communication. The process, there's some improvement, I think, that's needed in the process. I could go more into it, but I'm trying to keep my comments short. But I do feel strongly that because there's leftover money and because I do have a gap in one project that I'm proposing, but I'm actually proposing multiple units, that it's a very fair ask, and I feel like it's an unfair result and response to be told no, simply no.
Okay, Ashleigh, I want to begin by telling you that I really admire what you're doing and what you're striving to achieve in North Minneapolis.
Thank you.
It takes a lot of smarts and guts and energy to do that, so kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you.
I would like to suggest, and want to ask the staff if this is permissible, is whether or not we could ask Ashleigh to go back and work out the numbers on this with the city of Minneapolis, and we would leave the option open for the 74,000, you're a better mathematician than I am, 966, and figure out what, if any, portion of that might possibly be used in the form of an LHIA grant.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vento.
Councilmember Wolf, sorry, I'm getting really casual here by calling you by your first name, so I'll quit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ultimately, the city of Minneapolis is the applicant. So
Exactly.
it all depends on what they say. We
Exactly.
can't apply on their behalf.
Yeah.
But I'm open to amending this later. I mean, we should approve the main grants
Exactly.
today, but I'm open to amending it later
Exactly.
if the city of Minneapolis is amenable to that. But ultimately, they are the applicant and
Exactly.
they have the final say.
Exactly. Thank you, Councilmember Wolf. You explained it far better than I did. I didn't explain it at all. Councilmember Chambliss and then Councilmember Carter.
Thank you. This is unrelated to Ms. DeBose's request, but I think I might have missed something on how we moved the money from the Rondo community up to Serenity. They had requested 270 for the Amani Construction Rondo Land Trust, and I see 270 under Serenity Townhomes. And on page 12, that's where the recommended award, so I'm just trying to, it almost seems like we should cross it out or move AACDC to Serenity. Can you explain how that happened? Because I must have missed that.
Yeah, through the chair. Serenity Townhomes is Amani Construction, so that's just the name of their project. But that is their project. That requested the 270, and we're still awarding the 270.
Okay, so the 300,000 no longer exists because of number 2.
No.
Well, that's what's confusing me.
Oh, the AACDC application is the African American Center
Community
for-
Development Corporation?
Yes, which is separate from Amani's application with Rondo in St. Paul, which is project number 2. So project number 8 is with the city of St. Paul, but project number 2 is with the St. Paul Port Authority.
Okay.
That's what's
So-
missing.
So what happened with the AACDC? And, have they, are they planning on reapplying after they figure out what they were missing?
Yeah, so the developer, I believe her name is Georgia Fort, leading that project, did reach out and did ask for a call with me to prepare for the next round, which will come up in about June or July, so in a couple months.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
You
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Carter.
thank you. I was asking for clarity as well, but Representative Chambliss already received the response. I would just like to say thank you to both Ashleighs for bringing to our attention the issue around refresh. And I know that Minneapolis is the applicant, and certainly we need to hear from them. These processes can sometimes be a little strange. So thank you, Ashleigh and Met Council, for assuring that we heard about this. And thank you, Ashleigh, for ensuring that you raised your voice. I appreciate it.
Can I respond to, I think, part of her question? Is it
Oh,
Councilmember Chambliss?
Chambliss.
The 300 and, if you're wondering where the money went from where it was before with Minnetonka, there was $383,000 that was moved to another applicant that was initially being recommended only 300 and some thousand. So now their project is being fully funded at 750. And so that's where that 300,000 went. I felt like that was your question, but if not, maybe that's just another thing to point out.
I don't think I have enough background information to confirm if that was my question or not.
Okay, 'cause-
I could, Ashleigh Johnson, if you, Chair,
Yes.
might be able to clarify yes or no.
Ashley, do you want to clarify that for us, please?
Yes, so,
The original amount, if it helps.
no, I have it.
Oh, you have it? Okay.
So,
Thank you all.
Thank you.
so the amount that was
We'll let you
moved-
go. Do you want to go through the rest of the slides? That may help answer this.
All right.
It will help answer this.
All right, so our recommendations. We're recommending moving forward with 5 projects. The first is the City of Edina. That is the amount, or that is the project that was partially awarded. That was the next down from the City of Minnetonka. So we moved from the City of Minnetonka, adjusted that amount, fully funded the next one down, and then had remaining $75,000, which is the debacle that we are discussing now. However, these are our recommendations, so that would then fully fund Edina's request of 5 homes for $750,000. The City of Minnetonka for 2 homes for $288,634. Golden Valley, which is a repeat applicant, for $948,000 for 6 homes. PPL Greenbelt Homes, which is a previous LHIA awarded project, for $568,400. fully funding that and moving that forward with the city of Minneapolis. And then Serenity Townhouses, which is Amani Construction and Rondo Community Land Trust in partnership with the St. Paul Port Authority for 4 homes. So this is the City of Edina's proposal. They have a partnership with Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity and Homes Within Reach to develop 5 homes with an affordability range of 50 to 80%. They will be providing the match source from their Affordable Housing Trust Fund and anticipate to use the funds for acquisition, rehab, and then finishing. The second project that we're recommending is with the City of Minnetonka for a pair of twin homes at 80% of AMI for construction costs. They are also partnering with Amani Construction. The third applicant is through the Golden Valley HRA for $948,000. They have a partnership with Magnolia Homes and the Greater Metropolitan Housing Corporation to develop 6 homes at 60% of AMI. And this is through a homeownership partnership or a homeownership program at which Golden Valley has had increased success in not only building, but selling those homes to families of the families that identify as BIPOC. And then next is PPL Greenbelt Homes from the City of Minneapolis. They requested and we're recommending $568,400. They're partnering with PPL, or Projects for Pride in Living, for a new development of 5 homes. You can kind of see in the top right where they foresee these Greenbelt homes being in their larger Hawthorne proposal in North Minneapolis. And the primary use of these funds will be for a construction cost gap, including site preparations and the rest of the details that you see there. Finally, we are recommending Serenity Townhouses through the St. Paul Port Authority. And this is in partnership with Amani Construction and Rondo Community Land Trust to preserve 4 homes, but they will be newly developed homes. This project considers there will be doing preservation and new development in the same proposal. However, these are for 4 new homes at 80% of AMI for the construction of those homes. This is a summary that we put together from the table for additional information for council members. And staff would like to just highlight the range of projects that came through this round that we're recommending. The affordable housing range was between 192, 800, and that's in the City of Edina, and 304, 700, and that is in multiple other applications. So in at least 4 of the other applications, that is the maximum for the affordable price range for home buyers. So we had a range of affordability terms requested specifically by Councilmember Wolf. So it's really great to see the range of these affordability terms. And staff would like to note that the range of these affordability terms do lead to a range of different kinds of home buyers or different kinds of income levels. Different amounts of subsidy is needed for each level of affordability. And that's something that staff in the City of Minneapolis is looking to explore around affordability limits, and next year, how we consider our affordability terms. So we'll be looking forward to coming back and asking the council and our housing work group for more feedback on what we can do to consider longer terms of affordability, perhaps. But 3 of our proposals are through community land trusts. They will be affordable for 99 years if funded. 1 proposal for 30 years, that is the City of Minnetonka, and 1 proposal for 15 years, and that is the City of Minneapolis. So the affordability mechanisms are community land trusts, and for those 2 proposals for 30 and 15 years, restrictive covenants or a second mortgage. The marketing and sales partners of the proposals that we're recommended funding are Homes Within Reach, PPL, or Project for Pride in Living, Amani and Rondo Community Land Trust. You can see the breakdown of our targeted AMIs those top three proposals, affordable at 80%, and then the middle 60 and 50 to 80, which is the city of Edina. So the range in total development costs for the applications that we received and are recommending are 500 on the low end and 678 on the high end. That 500 is the city of Golden Valley or Edina?
Regina, yeah.
Edina. And then the higher one is the city of Minnetonka. And the range of requests per home range from Serenity in St. Paul and most likely Minnetonka. Or Edina. Not really sure at this point. So with that, I will take any questions from the council, and I will request that the council award 5 homeownership awards for LHIA totaling $2,825,034 and authorize its Executive Director of Community Development to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council.
Questions, discussion? Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions. I'm a little puzzled by the estimated market value of some of these that could be that low for a brand-new house. Where did you get those numbers? Is it a blighted neighborhood, or why is it so low?
Yeah, so the number specifically from the city of Minnetonka is from a, can I call on Sarah? Because I don't really remember the exact details that Rob from the city of Minnetonka.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, I think it was a broker's price opinion for Minnetonka, so that's the 450,000 they're estimating as market value. These are just estimates, but I think the lower value estimates are in the neighborhoods that have overall lower value of land costs.
Yeah, and for the city of Edina, they did have appraisals for, I think, 3 comparable homes in their application. So they were basing off the 3 comparable homes that they could pull, but they didn't have examples of these kinds of developments in their communities specifically. So they wrote what they could.
Councilmember Wolf.
Madam Chair, I was referring more to the ones that are lower than that. You answered the 2 that come out fairly high, but 275 in Minneapolis for something that costs $625,000 to build, and I mean that's just doesn't seem like a valid assessment of what a new house would be worth.
Lisa?
Madam Chair, thank you. Council members, a great question. And I would say that estimated market value is not out of line for homes, even in my neighborhood of this size. That's a pretty typical sales price. So if you're looking at what homes are selling for in those neighborhoods, even new construction isn't likely always to sell for what you could actually get out of certain neighborhoods in the market. So just thinking about that market value and what folks are using, that doesn't seem out of line with what I know to be sales in a lot of neighborhoods in Minneapolis,
Even for new construction.
even for new construction.
And I forgot what my other question was now. I'll think for a second.
Council members, or committee members, any other questions or comments?
Just that I had the same question. I think it's important for not just us to be aware of how expensive it is to build new in the city of Minneapolis. I think that's something that other folks should know as well. I don't know how we get the word out, but I do know that I built my house in a suburb for probably the similar reasons, because it was cheaper, but, and that was, 25 years ago, but it's just hard to get your head wrapped around that. And I'm wondering if we can, with our partners, look at some innovative solutions, whether it means doing fourplexes or manufactured homes or something like that. But
Yeah.
if we could explore that further in the community development and the housing work group, that would be great.
Yeah, and through the chair, as a response to Councilmember Chambliss, one of the best examples that I've that staff have been able to review was Minnesota Housing's board report that came out last week that detailed how their impact funds and how their multifamily rental funds per unit for their total development costs have increased significantly, especially since 2020, with over half of their multifamily applications asking for over $450,000 per rental unit. And this is a lot of new, not just, about vacancy or availability of homes, or we can't build them fast enough, or the cost of construction. It's all of it. So the Minnesota Housing Board report is an excellent resource for that kind of like total development cost information.
Thank you.
And I agree, that's something that we've got to get out there so that the world realizes the challenges that are being foisted upon us and everyone else. Councilmember Lindstrom.
Thank you. You mentioned that in the future we could possibly consider longer terms, affordability terms. And I just thought I'd ask, since it's top of mind for you, if there's any other things that after going through this process that you thought, oh, well, maybe we ought to think about revising this, that, the other thing.
Yeah, most definitely. Through the chair, we have explored a little bit when thinking about the pilot and restricting what it would mean to restrict applications to community land trusts for 99 years. And one of the things that we found was that with newer developers, that is one of the opportunities for emerging developers to actually build some of their first developments in partnership with community land trusts. But in the case that an applicant does not want to go that route, if they want to either explore a deed restriction or another kind of affordable restriction that doesn't require as much subsidy, that's where we end up getting the shorter affordability terms. So for example, for the city of Minneapolis or for the city of Minnetonka to partner with CLT, that is something that could be possible. But it seems as if the deed restrictions, the restrictive covenants, and the second mortgage are things that across the industry we are considering. So it looked like Lisa, did you want to add something? Okay. So that is something that we will look at, and that's also concurrently, that work is happening with our housing policy plan, thinking about affordability limits, affordability terms, how much it actually costs to develop. And one of our most desired changes for LHIA, specifically the homeownership program, is to look at who is our buyer. Who fits into this range of 192 to 304. Majority of BIPOC homeowners don't fit into that range. We know that that's the reality. So how do we make partnerships with Minnesota Housing, think about manufactured housing or different types of affordable housing that'll get us to lower AMIs. So us in partnership with staff in working on the housing policy plan have been like concurrently thinking about this program as a catalyst for some of that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I remembered my questions that I forgot before. And one pertains to the terms. I mean, it looks like you can do a restricted covenant for longer than PPL is planning to do. It seems like we're not really getting much bang for the buck when it's only for 15 years, because we're paying basically $8,000 a year per family for 5 families. If they stay in that house that whole time, then they just walk away with being the only families that ever got the affordability out of there. That's a lot of money to cover that few families. It seems like there should be other opportunities that are more bang for the buck. And so I guess I would voiced that having longer periods than 15 years, I think we should be looking at a minimum that's more in the 30 range than the 15 years. Otherwise, we're just buying stuff over and over and over again, and it never gets anywhere. And then the other thing was, we should be looking for applicants that get creative with their materials to save costs. Because when I was on the Lakeville City Council, we were building a liquor store, and the cost came out just crazy high. And we told the architect, go back and make it still nice. We don't want, junk, but make it still nice, but don't spend so much money and make this more affordable. And the building ended up getting an award. It was energy efficient, it was nicely designed, but it didn't have the top of the line materials. It had creative uses of things that will last for a long time, but, not everybody has to have granite countertops or whatever. There's other alternatives that can look really nice and last for a long time. So, looking for developers that are willing to make those sorts of efforts to keep the costs down would be nice to see in a future program.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm okay with what we have summarized in the proposals for now, but I definitely agree that we need to put our thinking caps on and see how we can get those affordability terms longer. Otherwise, we'll be back where, well, we won't be making progress as far as affordability. And if only one household gets to benefit, we're just too far, the gap is too big to continue progress if we don't have longer affordability terms. So I'm okay with where this is for now, because this is, our new program that we have. But, and I'm glad that, there are plans to take a look at all of the affordability and the cost issues and constraints that we have going forward.
Through the chair.
Okay, so, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to thank Councilmember Chambliss and also note that the city of Minneapolis did share with us that one of the things that they are considering in terms of how they award funds for community land trusts, or if there are terms of 15 to 30, is that residents have expressed the need for income mobility within their communities. And I'm not 100% sure of the connection, the direct connection between income mobility and affordability terms and what happens at sale, but that is something that I will explore next year. That seems like a fun topic that came up, and I wanted you to know about it.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Just really quickly. Yeah, definitely needs further discussion. I understand exactly what they're talking about, because there's a market at all levels, and the support that we provide at the different levels is going to be different. But definitely understand that some folks, just want to get their foot in the door and then be able to expand as their family expands or their income grows, and also just not just looking at the housing costs in terms of affordability, but other costs as well that factor into the family's financial and goals and what makes a thriving household and a thriving community.
Any more questions, committee members? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the awarding of 5 homeownership local housing incentives account grants totaling $2,825,034, and authorizing the Executive Director of Community Development to execute the grants on behalf of the council?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Councilmember Carter moves, Councilmember Lindstrom seconds the motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. Ashleigh, you get to be the star of the next one, too.
I know.
Okay, we have the Local Housing Incentives Account, LHIA Affordable Homeownership Grant, Multifamily Grants Program, 2023-310. Almost forgot to read the agenda item, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councilmember Vento. I am Ashleigh Johnson, again, the manager of local
You're still
housing.
Ashleigh Johnson?
I'm still Ashleigh Johnson. One of the ashes. And this presentation will be for our multifamily grants in partnership with Minnesota Housing and their consolidated RFP. So similar to homeownership, I'll talk about the application process and how we score. Also give funding recommendations and project summaries for the projects that we are recommending today. So how our multifamily application process still works is the consolidated RFP is released in the middle of July. And we then see all of those applications that come in through the multifamily housing portal. We look at the financials of all of those applications, whether or not they have requested LHIA or not, and we score them on LHIA's priorities. So then we have a full list of all of the applications, which were about 33 or 36 this year, and how they score in terms of LHIA criteria. We look at larger family units. We look at whether or not those units are going to people who have disabilities, intellectual, physical. And we also take into account length of affordability terms, so deeper affordability, those applications that consider 30% AMI or lower. We then talk to sub-allocators, so those that receive funds directly from the federal government, the city of Minneapolis, Dakota County, I believe the city of St. Paul, Washington County. We review all of this for LHIA priorities, and then after that, Minnesota Housing tells us where there's gaps, where our funding can fit in. They have an extensive financial review process, an underwriting process for these projects, and some of them, unfortunately, many of them this year, were unable to move forward. So this is our breakdown with the $5.4 million again. So we're talking about that $2.5 million for the multifamily awards now. And we're moving forward to recommend these 5 projects. They have already been funded by Minnesota Housing last week. They are 5780. I've actually never said that out loud. Lincoln, the city of Edina, for 89 units, recommending that for 450. Carver Oaks Senior Residence, which is a second application, or we funded Carver Place last year, which is the non-senior part of the development, and Carver County CDA is now coming back and ranked highly for LHIA. We're recommending 43 units in Carver, in the city of Carver, in partnership with the Carver County CDA. Next is Gladstone Crossing with the city of Maplewood, and that project also has received, or is proposed to receive, TBRA funds. And was a very high scoring project last year that did not move forward. So it's a reapplication. Next is PPL, BC Family Housing Phase 1, and that applicant is the city of Brooklyn Center for 60 units. And lastly is St. Olaf Exodus Building. This is a new and a preservation project with the city of Minneapolis. It is a all 30% AMI project with 66 units, and that is the most, or the highest amount that we are recommending for funding at $750,000. So we are proposing to support 298 rental units through these 5 projects. And next is an eye into each of these proposals. The first is 5780 Lincoln with the city of Edina. This proposal is a development, a proposal between the city of Edina and Solheim Development to build a new development with 89 units with units at or below, that sign is supposed to be flipped, at or below 30% for 23 of the units, and between 30 and 50 for the remaining 66 units. And this proposal is for efficiency 2 4-bedroom units. And you can see kind of where it is, straddling Highway 169 between the city of Minnetonka and Edina, or close to the city of Minnetonka. Next is Carver Oaks Senior Residence with Carver County CDA. This is a new development being proposed for 43 units next to Carver Place. The affordability part of it, 13 units at or below 30% of AMI, and then 30 to 50% of AMI at 30 units for 1 to 2 bedroom units. And I'll pause here to note that the proposals that we are making this year for the multifamily awards have generally lower AMIs than last year, and that is something that is also a trend with Minnesota housing. So deeper affordability, however, smaller proposed developments overall. So there were more 100+ unit developments coming through. So that's an interesting kind of trend that we've seen. Next is the city of Maplewood, Gladstone Crossing, recommending $500,000. This is a collaboration between the city of Maplewood and Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative for a new development of 40 units. Part of it is at or below 30%, 13 units, and between 30 and 50. The bedrooms will be between 2 and 4. Next is the Brooklyn Center project. It is a collaboration between the City of Brooklyn Center, Project for Pride and Living, or PPL, and Resurrecting Faith World Ministries. This is for a new development with 60 units, a similar AMI breakdown of at or below 30 units and 30 to 50, and efficiency 2 4-bedrooms. And then last, we have the City of Minneapolis, the St. Olaf Exodus building. You can kind of see the newer construction addition next to what is the older building. The existing is the brown building, and they plan to build that black addition with the 66 units that will be efficiency, all under or at or below 30% of AMI. And I have additional information, like additional project information for each project, if the council has any interest in hearing about a project in particular. But I'll pause there and accept any questions from the council.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, I have two. One is, have you heard additional information about, well, some of these I know have transportation nearby, if it's in Minneapolis, but for the Edina one, is there transportation near there? And then secondly, for those efficiency or studio apartments, how affordable is the whole package? I mean, if they do they have places to park? Do they have room to store their things? Because if they have to pay extra for that, has the city provided information to the Met Council on those kind of questions?
Oh, yes, through the chair. So in the project summaries at the back of the LHIA recommendation, the city of Minneapolis and Aon and Hennepin County provided text to describe the project. They mentioned some key building features, in-house, so space for touch-tone mental health employees to work with residents, reception space, bike storage. There is no information about parking in their summary information, but maybe further in their application. So I could definitely look that up.
Yeah, I think it's important to look at that as we start looking at more, studio or those micro apartments. Just looking at, the total cost versus, you have a place to lay your head down, but if you have to pay, I don't know what the going rates are for storage outside of those buildings or even inside of those buildings, or if if they don't have access to transportation, then that's problematic as well, and they have to use Uber services or something. But these are real factors that can add up very quickly. So is it really affordable, or are we just kind of stripping things down?
Any other questions? Councilmember Lindstrom.
I just wanted to call out the fact that there's really 5 places in our region where you can put things like this, the core, east, west, north, south, and this hit 5 out of 5. So I think that's really just something to note, and something that's very positive in my eyes.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Chambliss.
I thought it was done, but if we could look at all of the rounds and look at the geography, I think that would be very good to get a report on that, because, you could have a lot of, diversity of locations in one round, but not the other, so I think that would be helpful.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to, let me get this straight here, approve the awarding of 5 multifamily local housing incentives account grants totaling $2.5 million, and authorizing the Executive Director of Community Development to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council?
Move approval.
Wolf moves.
Second?
Lindstrom seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, that motion carries. Thank you, Ashleigh.
Thank you.
You survived us.
Thank you so much.
On consent business item number 2023-308, funding recommendations for the 2023 round 2 tax-based revitalization account grants. Marcus Martin, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank council members for putting this item on your agenda today. I am Marcus Martin. I'm here I'm the program coordinator for the tax-based revitalization account, and here to present those second round recommendations today. So these are, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over some of the background slides quickly here, but these are just showing who we are and what are some of the commonalities among the programs. So we do have 4 accounts. We'll be talking about the TBRA program today. So the tax-based revitalization account helps folks both in those planning areas when they're planning their development, and also in environmental cleanup before construction. All right. So now we'll get to what we have for this cycle here. So in March, the council approved up to $5.5 million to be awarded in 2 funding cycles. Those applications are due in May and in November. We awarded $2.4 million earlier in May, and that leaves a maximum of $3.1 million to award this fall. Each cycle, we offer 3 types of grants. So we have investigation grants, contamination cleanup grants, and what we call seeding equitable environmental development grants, or SEED grants, and those can be used for either investigation or cleanup. Similar to what you've seen recently, the scoring criteria is separated into those 3 general categories of what, how, and who. So I won't go into too much detail there. We received 15 applications this cycle. One of them was a seed request in St. Paul, and 14 were cleanup applications. And those were located in the cities of Bloomington, Maplewood, Minneapolis, Newport, North St. Paul, Plymouth, St. Paul, Shoreview, and South St. Paul. The total requested was nearly $5.6 million. The guiding statute limits the amount of funding that can go to a single project or a single city, rather, and also there is a limit on how much can go to Minneapolis and St. Paul. So based on the funding available this cycle, those limits are a little bit over 1.5 million, nearly 1.6 million, and a little bit over 2.3 million for those two limits. So next, let's look at the individual recommendations. So starting with the seed program, we are recommending funding for the one seed application from St. Paul. That is for the Hams Brewery development in the amount of $50,000. We are recommending 11 cleanup requests. Funding is recommended for, starting at the top, the Snelling Yards Family Housing Project in the amount of $233,800. Soul Apartments, $394,300. Gladstone Village, $100,000. Rice Street Crossings, $147,800. Wakota Logistics Center, $814,700. Gladstone Crossing, $196,100. That's the same project Ashleigh mentioned before. Stinson Apartments, $259,600. And I'm going to pause here. The enabling statute allows us, it rather requires us to look at potential funding from other funding partners. In this case, we are recommending additional funding above the original request to compensate for what we an expected shortfall from one of the funding partners. All right, continuing on. Funding is also recommended for 7th Avenue redevelopment, $191,300. Red Rock Villas, $88,100. And residential apartment and daycare, $228,000. And O'Shaughnessy Distillery expansion, $125,100. All right, so going back to those funding limits for a moment, a total of $2.8 million is recommended for funding. This total meets the limits for the single city. In this case, it is South St. Paul that was the highest individual amount and highest city amount. And it also meets the combined limit for Minneapolis and St. Paul. So those percentages are shown in Table 6 in the business item. So shown here are some images of what the projects could look like upon completion and once they're built. So kind of clockwise, starting from the upper left, these are images of the Snelling Yards Family Housing. Next is Soul Apartments, the Gladstone Village, and then Rice Street Crossing. So those were our top scoring candidates. The three of the cleanup applications, we're not recommending funding for all. There are three that you notice that we are not recommending funding for. Those three did not have a competitive score. They fell below our minimum requirement, which is 75 points. Starting with Park Plaza, the interior updates to the Park Plaza are not expected to result in a tax base increase in the property rates. The contaminants, and that there are primarily asbestos in this case, are moderately low risk when compared to other competing sites. So just as a reminder, all of the sites that we look at all have environmental issues. They all have some brownfield issues. Oh, thank you. Oh, did I go too far? Yeah. All right. Thank you for catching me up there. In the case of the Hams Brewery, this was a project that was estimated to start construction in this particular development phase 3 years from now. And while there is a significant asbestos in the tanks and so forth in this site, this is a site that where the building is vacant and the building's secured. So it's a little bit different risks posed by that site. All right, let's go to that last one there. And then somewhat similarly, we're also not recommending funding for the Prudential campus development phase. This one, similar to the competing applications, the health risk was moderately low. And then when there's a significant amount of abatement, as there is in this one, this case had minimal friable asbestos material. And similarly, the building was also vacant like the Ham site. In addition, the estimated job growth was good, but the ratio of jobs per grant dollar was more moderate, in this case, mostly because of the high cost of the abatement. And there aren't many other sources to go to do that sort of abatement. And lastly, there were few affordable units proposed in the new apartment building. So I can pause there before we go to our
I just have a comment, Marcus, and this is not meant to sound critical or, I would suggest different wording in the future as it relates to moderately low environmental health risk, especially regarding asbestos. One of these sites is a spot where my husband worked, and he was not working directly with asbestos. And I don't know how much asbestos was in his system when he died, but it only takes one fiber to take a life. So I would suggest that we come up with different wording for that in the future, if that's possible.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I will do so.
Any other comments or questions at this point on the recommended and not recommended? Okay, keep plowing through.
All right. The recommendation to the council is that the Metropolitan Council award 12 tax-based revitalization account grants totaling $2,818,000, shown in Table 1 in the business item, and authorize its Executive Director of Community Development to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Councilmember Wolf.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you, Madam
Never
Chair.
apologize for asking a question.
So the Gladstone crossing had $1 million in TOD money last year. Did they start construction and then find a mess, or what? Usually it goes in the other direction. You have cleanup first and then get money for construction. Why are we backwards on that?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, no, my understanding is that they didn't start. They often apply whenever the first funding cycle that is available, when they kind of feel like they're ready to apply, they apply for the first one that they see. I don't think it's a case where they didn't know.
Just kind of out of order. Yeah.
Yeah, out of order.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Lindstrom moves.
Second.
Carter seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Non-consent business item number 4, 2023-311, adoption of Livable Communities Act affordable and life cycle housing goals for 2021-2030. Yes, Sarah Berkey. Sorry, I'm not doing a good job with introductions here. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair Vento. Hi, I'm Sarah Berkey. I'm the Senior Manager for Livable Communities and Housing, and this should be a pretty brief business item. You'll recall that last time we met, we had a public hearing on the negotiated affordable housing and life cycle housing goals for the City of Mayor for this current decade. And there was a public comment period open for 10 days after that hearing. It has since closed. I have not received any public comments on this topic, and so we have a resolution for your consideration here today to affirm these goals and to welcome the City of Mayor into the LCA program for the rest of the decade.
Any questions or comments?
Move approval.
Wolf moves approval. I think I saw Carter seconds. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
And item number 5, 2023-309, approval of the joint powers agreement for the Metropolitan Housing Opportunities. Terry Smith, Terry, I didn't even see you back there.
Yeah, Lisa didn't either. I'm like, I'm hiding today, I guess.
Where is she?
Yeah, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Another short one before you today, but I'm here to request your approval of a joint powers agreement between the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, the Metropolitan Council, and the Plymouth Housing and Redevelopment Authority. This is for the Metropolitan Housing Opportunities Program that we call MHOP. And the initiative is to approve a streamlined voluntary conversion process to convert 106 Minneapolis public housing units to voucher assistance. You may recall I was before you in June and again in October with an information item on this initiative. But essentially, the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority will be transferring 106 public housing units to the council that will then be converted to voucher assistance. The 79 units that are located in Metro HRA service area will be converted to project-based vouchers. And then the 19 units that are located in Plymouth will be sent to Plymouth HRA for administration. Purpose of this approval tonight is to request your approval of a joint powers agreement that will allow Minneapolis to continue operating the units while they remain public housing. And then at the point they're converted to Section 8, that council would take over operation. So my request is to approve a joint powers agreement substantially in the form attached in the business item between the Metropolitan Council, the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, the City of Plymouth, governing the transfer and conversion of the Metropolitan Housing Opportunity Program units. I could use all the acronyms. I would pull out acronyms. And then authorize the Community Development Executive Director to execute the agreement on behalf of the council. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions? Councilmember Carter.
Actually, I'd heard a lot, and I was ready to move approval, but let me hold on for questions.
Okay. Questions? Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have a whole lot. Just curious about the history and where we're at in the history timeline from the Holman consent decree in 1995. Do we know how much housing is left to convert or still exists that's public housing, and if you separate it out from senior housing?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Chambliss, there's a variety of agencies across the region that helped implement the intent of the consent decree. All 770 units were redeveloped, and it was really a region-wide effort, including many parties, Carver County, MPHA, the council, Washington County HRA, several agencies that helped develop the units. Some remain as public housing. Some have been converted through HUD's conversion process from public housing to some other form of financing. For example, the council had 150 units that are known as a family affordable housing program that were part of this effort, and the council converted its units, our units, back in 2010 to project-based vouchers. So I don't know the status of them all. They're all affordable because the consent decree required long-term affordability, but they're in a variety of forms and forms of assistance today.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Comments? Councilmember Carter.
I'll make the motion to approve. Thank you.
Okay, so Councilmember Carter moves approval of the joint powers agreement for the Metropolitan Housing Opportunities Program, agenda item 2023-309. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Councilmember Chambliss. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Before everybody starts to clear out, I just want to thank Ashleigh and Marcus and Sarah and Terry for these non-consent business items. It's a lot of work, especially this time of year. I mean, life is a lot of work this time of year, and then you add work, and it's a lot of work. So thank you all very much. And we'll move on now to our information. We have two items here. Michael Larson and Caitlin Shampoo are going to present the 2040 Comprehensive Plan Amendment Annual Report. They've worked out some choreography and music for it in order to keep our attention this evening.
I know, we came from both sides of the room.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Michael Larson, Planning Analyst. in local planning assistance in the Community Development Division. I'm joined here by my colleague Caitlin Shampoo, who serves as the council's reviews coordinator, and we're here to present findings from our inventory and analysis of amendments to local comprehensive plans. So this is our third year of compiling information related to comprehensive plans since the 2040 decennial updates to plans to better understand their overall impact and report on any themes that we identify as a result of this review. So today we'll provide an update on how and why local governments are amending their plans, the overall impact of amendments, and highlights from 2023. So we'd like to start by reminding the council members and others why cities amend their comprehensive plans. Plans provide direction and predictability to meet the needs of each community and region into the future. Having a comprehensive plan that never changes is not realistic and can prevent a community from responding to new and previously unforeseen opportunities for new housing, jobs, and other positive changes in the community. One major reason the council reviews and authorizes these amendments is to ensure that we can course correct to support the orderly and economical development of the region and its communities. So again, the reasons for many comprehensive plans fall into two general buckets, development-driven and planning-related. Development-driven amendments typically involve changes to guiding land use to accommodate a specific development project. However, they may also be accompanied by a MUSA expansion or a MUSA staging change, an annexation by ordinance, and sometimes a forecast change. Planning-related amendments often involve policy or text revisions that stem from, say, a neighborhood plan or other planning study. For example, an amendment may propose the creation of a new guiding land use or a change in the allowable density of a guiding land use. And these range of examples underscore the importance of planning as an ongoing and evolutionary process rather than something that's done once and fixed in stone. So, Caitlin.
Thanks, Mike. So this slide provides a high-level overview of findings across all amendments authorized by the council through the end of November 2023. First, we found that most amendments, 88%, were submitted by communities in the Metropolitan Urban Service Area. We also found that after peaking in 2021 with 115 amendments authorized, we've seen a decline in the number of amendments authorized by the council in the past 2 years. Third, most amendments propose changes in guiding land use or text changes. As Mike said just now, we considered text changes to be things like the creation of a new guiding land use category, the change in a density range, or maybe the change in the text describing allowable uses within a land use category. And finally, out of all the amendments authorized by the council, 14 were found inconsistent with regional policy. So this shows that although we do see some policy inconsistencies, there are not many cases in which we're unable to work with the community to resolve it. This slide shows or provides a by the numbers breakdown of all amendments to the 2040 comprehensive plans authorized through November 2023. So we received 322 amendments or authorized 322 amendments consisting of 360 actions. And these numbers are different because, as Mike stated, some amendments propose multiple actions or multiple changes, and we like to capture that difference. So that's why you'll see a larger number of actions than amendments. Of those 322 amendments, 242 were reviewed administratively by staff, 80 came to the CDC for review, 14 had policy issues, as I mentioned, and we saw 12 changes in community designation as a result of amendments. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, this graph shows that peak in 2021 with the slight decline in recent years. And we currently have fewer amendments authorized in 2023, but I assume that the final number will be similar to 2022 as we still have a couple amendments in process right now. The graph on this slide shows the breakdown of amendments by community designation. And as you can see, most amendments are submitted by communities designated as suburban, suburban edge, or emerging suburban edge, followed by urban center and urban communities. We do receive amendments from communities in the rural service area, but not to the same extent. And we don't have specific data identifying why this occurs, but we can speculate that we see more amendments from communities within MUSA because these areas experience greater levels of development activity, and many amendments are driven by developments. And this slide dives a little deeper into the types of actions proposed in amendments. Overall, the most frequent action proposed by amendments is a change in guiding land use that is associated with a development. And this is followed by changes in guiding land use that are not associated with the development. And those changes may occur in areas where development is anticipated, but there's not a specific project associated with the site quite yet. We also see it to clean up errors that are in existing maps. Apart from changes in guiding land use and text changes, we also occasionally see proposals to expand MUSA and proposals to change the development staging of a site. So a site that was previously identified to develop in the 2030 to 2040 decade may be changing to being planned for development in the 2020 to 2030 decade. And I also want to point out that the types of actions that are shown on this slide may also be associated with other actions, such as the forecast changes and changes in community designation, as Mike mentioned earlier. Similar to a previous slide, this slide shows the by the numbers breakdown of amendments, but only for amendments authorized in 2023. The map on the right side highlights the communities from which the council received and authorized amendments in 2023, and that includes Scott County. That's why there's a little outline around that. And as you can see, we do receive amendments from communities across the region, although predominantly in the Metropolitan Urban Service area. But in 2023, we received 76 amendments consisting of 83 actions. 64 of those amendments were reviewed administratively by staff. 12 came to the CDC for review. We saw 3 policy inconsistencies and 2 community designation changes. This slide shows the types of actions proposed in amendments just in 2023. And these actions, or this graph, follows a similar pattern of that, of the overall picture that you saw a few slides ago, with the greatest number of actions being land use changes driven by development. And then as part of our analysis, we also looked specifically at the development-driven amendments that proposed a change in guiding land use. So we found that these 39 amendments consisted of 575 acres, 3,465 total housing units, and of those housing units, 485 were affordable, and we saw over 175,000 square feet of commercial or industrial space. And then this slide provides a closer look at the types of land use changes proposed in development-driven amendments. So in our analysis, we categorize the types of land uses as either residential, non-residential, or mixed use. And as shown by the graph, most land use changes propose a change from one residential use to another residential use. So that could be from low-density residential to medium-density residential, for example, from a non-residential use to a residential use, or from one non-residential use to another non-residential use. And then when taking a closer look at the changes from one residential use to another, we found in 2023 that about half saw an increase in the density or an increase in the housing capacity, and about half saw a decrease in the housing capacity. So it was about equal. And then I also want to point out that the third bar from the right, which shows the number of land use changes from one mixed use category to another mixed use category, it's not very common, as you can see, but it does sometimes occur in communities that have multiple mixed use land use guidings. So for example, a community may change a site from mixed use commercial residential to mixed use commercial office. As an example.
So this year we had 5 amendments that involved regional policy issues, and because of that, you would have seen them at committee here presented by staff. So this is a little bit of a recap about those 5 particular issues. With regard to housing policy, amendments from Victoria and Norwood Young America involved inconsistencies with regional housing policy. So similar to other cases that we've had in the past, what happened was that both cities re-guided land that had been previously guided at higher residential densities. And as a result, both cities then fell below the amount of an inventory of land that would be needed to accommodate their allocation of regional housing, affordable housing. And this is something that we've seen with other cases in the past. So as a result, this would make both cities ineligible to receive livable communities grants from the council, though I believe only Victoria is currently a livable communities participant. And all cities who've experienced this can rectify the situation by finding additional land to be re-guided at higher densities and meet that inventory. One amendment from St. Francis involved an inconsistency, with density and natural resources policy. This related to the re-guiding of residential land to support the creation of 4 lots that were smaller than regional policies for areas of the city that the council identified as diversified rural. And 2 amendments involve changes to community designation. These involve both changes from rural residential to emerging suburban edge. This is something we've seen in the past as well. In the case of Lake Elmo, involved 99 acres, and in the case of North Oaks, it involved 17.4 acres to accommodate residential development. So, on this slide and the next 2 slides, wanted to recap 3 amendments, all of which, 2 of which were administrative reviews, so you didn't necessarily see the details on this, but it illustrates examples of how the council works with cities to accommodate changes to their comprehensive plans that meet both local and regional goals. This is an interesting case in Minneapolis. The Northside Economic Opportunity Network, or NEON, began working in 2006 to build and support Northside businesses owned by lower income Northside residents. NEON is planning to construct this food incubator building on the 2100 block of West Broadway in North Minneapolis. And this will contain a large commercial kitchen that will be shared by part-time food businesses from a variety of retail food industries, including mobile food, catering, delivery, farmers market vendors, on-site food service, et cetera. What in this particular case, the re-guiding was 2 parcels of land adjacent to the West Broadway corridor that was appended to a larger site plan. So this re-guiding needed to occur to accommodate basically an expansion of land that was guided on West Broadway. So in this case, the re-guiding was from what was called Urban Neighborhoods Interior 3 to Mixed Use Corridor 6. An interesting fact about Minneapolis's comprehensive plan is they combine a guiding land use with a built form, which designation, which really represents the intensity of uses. So it combines mix of uses with intensity. So in this case, it's the support of 265 jobs, and the council's, although the council did not support this through a livable community grant, this is kind of similar to projects that we would support, and we certainly have provided support for other uses along West Broadway. In this case in Rogers, this has involved the ROARS Workforce Housing Comprehensive Plan Amendment, involved the re-guiding of just shy of 10 acres from medium density to high density residential to accommodate an apartment building of 281 units, all of which are, I believe, are rent and income restricted to 60% of area median income. And the project helps the city meet its goals of providing more attainable housing for the local employment base. This particular site is located at the northeast corner of South Diamond Lake Road and Brockton Lane North. In this interesting case of related to the evolution and ongoing planning that communities, especially in the fully developed area, experience in Bloomington, the city created a policy language specifically for the 42 acres of industrial guided property along the east side of Lyndale between 86th and 92nd Street. This amendment offers some policy flexibility for uses along that stretch, including a wider mix of uses, such as commercial uses and in limited cases, higher density housing. The Lyndale corridor is a significant commercial transit and aspiring pedestrian street, and it's been the subject of considerable planning over the years, and this has also been accompanied by a zoning study for that helped guide some of the policy changes for that portion of the corridor. So that concludes our presentation. Would be happy to entertain any questions if you had. Certainly, there's a lot of data that we collect, and as we've said in the past, if there are particular things you might be interested in, or us to follow up on in the future, we'd love to hear that as well.
Comments or questions? Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there is a threshold for amendments that are required, that we have to look at, that we require an official amendment for. Does it vary based on the type of change, or how does that work?
Chair Vento, Councilmember Chambliss, we do have a list of criteria that an amendment needs to meet in order to be reviewed administratively. One of them has to do with policy consistency. So if there are any, as I had mentioned earlier, if there's any policy issues, that would be presented to council with a staff report. Normally, we don't present if there are no policy issues that goes on the consent agenda. One of the administrative review criteria that we amended recently was that we assess the change in residential capacity of an amendment. So if, for example, a site is re-guided from medium density residential to high density residential, we'll look at the change in capacity from what the policy supported previously to what the new guiding land use or what the actual number of units are. And I forget the date when we had changed those administrative review, but we changed that threshold from 100 units to 250. So that has allowed a number to be reviewed administratively. And it's quite common to be for a re-guiding to be from, say, a commercial only district to like a district that is either mixed use or accommodating a 4 to 6 story building. And so a lot more of those types of development driven amendments are now reviewed administratively, whereas before they weren't. What are some other criteria, the size and scale?
Yeah, there are some criteria associated with the number of acres impacted by an amendment. So land use guiding changes less than 80 acres. We have some criteria associated with any forecast changes. It needs to be within 5% in order to meet that criteria of the administrative review guidelines. And I believe there are a couple others, but they're just not coming to my mind right now.
It's not a quiz.
Those are the big ones, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Scale and impact, and, yeah.
Okay, and then I like the nature of the amendment chart that you put together on page 6, that was from 2019 to 2023. If we could continue tracking that forward, I'm not sure if we just focused on that time frame or we just started in 2019.
Chair, committee member, 2019 is when we received we authorized the first amendment to the 2040 comprehensive plan. So that's why it starts in 2019.
Okay. So it would still be nice to see, before 2019, just to see how things are trending. But I like looking at it in terms of, the land use changes without development and then the other criteria for those 5 years.
Great, thank you.
Lisa?
Thank you. Madam Chair and Councilmember Chambliss, we previously reported on amendments to 2030 comprehensive plans, so in the prior decade. And I think we began that work in 2014 or 15 on the annual report. So we are very happy to share our kind of last decennial plans worth of reporting as well. It uses slightly different categories, so it might not track the same because we were tracking a little different, but we certainly can share our last report, which would have happened in 2017 or 2018. It was right around the time when the 2040 plans were due to the council for review, and so no one was amending their plans anymore.
Yeah, maybe I'm the only one that cares about it, I don't know, but I just think it would be kind of cool to see, how much development has been going on and how Met Council has been interacting with these evolving changes in the region, but.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The information that is presented in the agenda item and the PowerPoint are nice, but is there an actual written report of this information?
Chair, committee member, not outside of what we have provided today, but we can provide additional information if you're interested.
Well, if there's not, Madam Chair.
Yes.
If there's not going to be an actual written report, it would be nice if the agenda item was a little more robust than just the text that we have there. I mean, it's important information, and I find myself a lot of times going back and looking at things that have been presented before because something triggers in my mind, oh, I saw that, let me go look at it. And if there's no written report, it would be better to have a more robust agenda item with that information so that we can find it if we want to.
I listened to the, anyone want to comment on that? I listened to the Lake Elmo hearing that the Task Force on Metropolitan Governance had last Thursday. And it was a long hearing. And with the exception of maybe 2-3 people, it was pretty heavy duty. And one of the comments that I put down in my notes is that for a city, nothing is simple. Simple amendments and minor land use adjustments are costly and time-consuming. I'd be curious if there's any way of quantifying approximately how much time it takes to do these amendments, and also what costs are involved for the cities and townships when they make those changes. The other comment where I wrote a note down, and this is something we've talked about a lot, is that comp plans don't fit in the township mold. And there was frustration expressed by that township in terms of, we're not a city, we're not a suburb, we're not in the urban core, we're a township. And the process and the expectations just don't fit what their community experience is. So I just wanted to share those. I think it's worth noting. And Councilmember Wolf, you can complete my thought.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we've talked for many, many years about having a comp plan light or something of that sort for places that are not experiencing any development. If you're like Lakeville or Woodbury or Minneapolis, where there's a lot of development going on, you absolutely have to have a comp plan. Because if you don't make rules ahead of time, you can't possibly keep up with the development, figuring out things one development at a time. But for these places that are going to have zero development or 3 houses or something, it's a lot of work for not a lot of benefit for the community. So yeah, and Ms. Barajas has been talking about things that we could do on a staff level to make that issue easier for people. I think staff has heard that message loud and clear. It just takes time to get there. Yeah. And the reason why we went to more administrative reviews is because it is significantly faster for the cities, because the timeline of having to make the different meetings for community development, and if it has anything to do with their sewer stuff, environment, and then the full council, that adds significantly to the amount of time, which is why we tried to make it less onerous on communities.
Good, thank
Too
you.
bad that we don't get to rebut things that people say. at-
Well, and I think even if we did, you know, some people, you get a message going in your head, and it's hard to, yeah.
If I may, Madam Chair, our administrative review process is typically complete well ahead of our 15 business day review deadline. So once we receive a complete application, staff are reviewing that, turning that around, and getting a response, authorizing that amendment back to that community within 3 weeks, if not sooner than that, especially for the simpler amendments.
It's good to know.
So it is
And
a-
you've said that before, and it's good to be reminded, so, good. Other comments?
Track all that? I'm sorry, we also track all of those timelines. Those are something that we, you know, it's one of our performance indicators internally for our staff. So
Good.
we're always looking at that.
Good. Caitlin and Michael, thank you. This is a great report. Appreciate it. And last but not least, we have Sarah Berkey returning. She's going to give us a presentation on the Livable Communities Act 2024 Fund Distribution Plan, highlights of proposed program changes.
Yes, hello again, Councilmember Vento, council members, and I'm Sarah Berkey, the Senior Manager for Livable Communities, and just wanted to come tonight to keep the conversation moving about our plans for next year for the Livable Communities Act programs. Talked about this at a high level at our last meeting, and today we're also celebrating, I think, the end of the CDC's year in terms of the 2023 LCA programs. And so that's exciting, and it's time when we're already turning to thinking about next year and how to make funds available to continue this work and build on it for the next year. So tonight, I'll just give a brief overview of some of the major changes we're looking at making. Overall, they are major but relatively minor because we are planning to do a fuller look at the program as a whole and propose some larger changes with your input and with stakeholders' input over the course of the next year before the 2025 program year. And that will allow us to better align our work with the Imagine 2050 process and other things going on at the council. And so after tonight, you'll see a full draft of our fund distribution plan come for your review and discussion at your next meeting on January 16th. That's almost a whole month from today. And then we'll bring this to the February 5th CDC meeting as a business item for your approval, and then the council could approve it on February 14th because the best Valentine's Day present for everyone in our region is to really mark their calendar for the upcoming opportunities to apply for LCA funds.
That instead of roses and chocolate?
We can talk about it. Yeah, it's all on the table. For the LCDA and TOD development programs, a couple of proposals that we'll be bringing are really just about streamlining and making the process a bit more efficient this year. We've had a two-step scoring process for the last several years, and we'd like to bring the Livable Communities Advisory Committee more into the first step of the process, and so there's no need for two separate steps in the process. That'll allow us to hopefully bring recommendations to you a little earlier and make better use of our volunteer time and our staff time. And we may need to come back with some updates about the LCAC itself and its bylaws because we'd like to use that committee to work on programs other than just LCDA and TOD, ideally on the homeownership program as well, because we're doing a pretty similar grant-making process, but we haven't been doing the scoring and review with exactly the same system. And then the other sort of minor streamlining change is that rather than talking about the scores as what, how, and who we'll be doing with the project, we will be talking about what and how because it was getting a little arcane. And again, we're just kind of streamlining the scoring guidance to get at what your priorities are in a simpler way. So you'll see a lot of red ink about that, but I don't think it'll be a major change. When you look at the red line, sometimes it looks like a lot of changes. As you note, this has been the second year of our pilot phase for the homeownership grant program. So as I mentioned, we'd like to bring in some external review, and we're looking at an opportunity to use the Livable Communities Advisory Committee to review some aspects of our homeownership program as well. And again, to kind of streamline and coordinate our processes more across all of the programs. We also have been requiring a one-to-one match with the homeownership grant because it's part of the local housing incentives account program, and that's a statutory requirement. However, it adds a bit of hassle and causes, I think, some of the confusion we saw tonight as well. And so we're working on how to do this in a more straightforward way. And we'll likely propose a 50% cap on total development costs with our award rather than a one-to-one match with the city signing off on the match portion. And that's just in recognition of the fact that the funding for this program is primarily not coming from the $1.5 million in the local housing incentives account each year. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be an LHIA program. It can be an LCA program. It's using the program reserve funds typically in recent years. And we are also taking some of your guidance from your past discussions and looking at some more guidance in the program in terms of priorities for geographic distribution and kind of the number of recipients for the program. So that if we have more proposals that qualify for funding than we have funding available for, we'll have a little clearer guidance in advance of how that will be distributed or how we might look at different circumstances. The last exciting change that we'll be bringing for your further discussion next month is the scattered site pilot approach to the TBRA program. With our scattered site investigation program, we've had relatively low demand in recent years, and so Marcus Martin, who you met earlier, and our team have been looking at kind of ways to increase interest in that program, make sure it's serving needs, and we believe that offering the scattered site option could be helpful in better serving the needs of communities who have potentially multiple sites in their own community that could use some investigation of environmental issues in a relatively short period of time. This would reduce the barrier to application by allowing them to apply for a larger pool of funds for up to 5 project sites. And we would simply require them to spend most of those funds before they're eligible to apply for more. So those are some major changes we hope to bring. I wanted to make sure that you had a chance to think about them in advance. And if you have feedback or guidance for us on anything else, I'd love to hear it.
Comments or questions? Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I kind of feel like a lot of the council's participation in this has been way up at this level with the meetings that we had and not enough in the weeds. So I don't feel like I have a good grasp on what the needs are, like I would say in environmental services. If we're gonna change a grant program, we get into the weeds and we get to listen in on all the meetings with cities, you know, like when they have the budget workshops and or if they have meetings about different programs, we can listen into them. And the way this is structured, I don't feel like we're at the center of the process and understanding everything that's going on. And I don't feel like we get enough back and forth with communities on what's working and what's not. I don't know how to fix that, but I just don't feel like I've been a part of the process as much as I would like to be, or that I get to dig into the weeds as much as I would like to.
Sarah, do you want to comment at all, or?
Yeah, Chair Vento and Councilmember Wolf, I'd say certainly we would welcome your further guidance. And, you know, we've kept some of the discussions earlier this year high level because it does feel like we need some high level direction on the overall goals of the program from you so that then we can bring some detailed proposals for your discussion as a first step. And that is, again, why we're not proposing major changes right now, because we want your feedback and we also really want to talk to potential applicants, existing applicants, other stakeholders, developers, folks in the region about what these proposed changes that we might be considering with your input, like what impact they would have on them as well.
Councilmember Wolf, did you want to say anything further?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, some of these changes are pretty substantial from the ongoing way that we have done the work. And so I'm trying to figure out what is the bar of what can we do this year and what do we have to wait to another year? Because some of this stuff, you know, going to only one round and having people only score on their area is a pretty substantial change from how it's been done in the past. So I guess I maybe I need to have a discussion offline to really dig into the weeds, but I don't feel like we're being used as much as we could be interacting with communities and talking with each other on detailed stuff. For me, I get lost when we're up here. It's like, okay, flying around in the clouds, and what really means something is what happens on the ground, and so I feel like I missed some of the discussion.
Where the rubber meets the road.
What?
Where the rubber meets the road.
Yes.
Yeah. Councilmember Carter.
Yeah, I appreciate that staff takes on the role of ensuring the knowledge around more of the detail and bringing to us the higher level opportunities to register thoughts where decisions are needed. And I'm glad that you spoke up because I'm thinking, and maybe I'm newer and this is the first time around, I'd love to better understand the key issues that we're looking to address and to have the opportunity to, from that kind of issues framing, as we're thinking about changes for the future. I realize that we're upon this next year, but as we're thinking about those changes, to be able to really understand what our alternatives are and what some of the results of the alternatives or impacts of those alternatives might be in terms of how they help us to meet our goals. You know, a question that I would be asking here around, for example, the home ownership proposals would be the discussion that we've had about affordability and whether or not that would frame an opportunity to more narrow proposals down as we look at affordability, whether or not the issue of emerging developers, how we're addressing that, and how, in fact, and you may have told me this already, if so, forgive me, but how, in fact, that helps to prioritize our proposal selections. So there, I wanted to say, how are those things impacting, and how have you considered that for the 2024 timeframe? And maybe what I am saying and what you are saying, what I'm hearing perhaps, is that we need a deeper dive as we look toward the next period. But I do agree that, you know, as you're thinking about how to utilize those external reviewers, you know, I'd like to know more about, you know, how that works. I think that if we're placing them in their areas of specialty, I understand why that would be. But then that could also be a disadvantage as we're perhaps limiting the creativity of those who are not typically engaged in a particular area to look in with new and bright ideas. So I'm not giving answers. I'm asking questions. You know, I appreciate your moving forward into 2024. As you do some additional information around how you parse out those recommendations and how we'll get back together in 2024 as early as possible to look toward the future would be just my suggestion for what I'd like to see back.
Councilmember Chambliss, you have a look on your face that your hand isn't up, but I'm just checking.
Oh, it was up, but.
Oh, it was.
Put it down, guys.
That's your subconscious.
Yeah, nobody's
picking it up
home
after the
here.
fact. No.
Councilmember Chambliss.
No, I think Councilmember Wolf and Carter have really good points. This is a lot of information to digest, and I do like the fact that we're looking at how to do that. I mean, you've taken, a year of feedback from this committee, and then it'll take another year to transition into some of the new changes. I think it's good that we're having this conversation so that you have some additional feedback to take in. It's a lot of information. Some of it's very complex. I know with the LCAC, we've got, a lot of complexity and people that really want to dig in at that level. I mean, the same thing happens with TAB. I go to TAB meetings and I'm like, man, these guys are really good. I mean, they really dig into it. So, and then at a council level, of course, we want it at the higher level, and we want to have enough detail so that we can ask the proper questions and make the proper policy decisions. So there is that balance, and we're just going to have to continue to strive for striking that balance.
Yep. It's a good way to put it. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, Sarah, thank you. This was very, very helpful.
Thank you. And Councilmember Vento and all of you council members here tonight, I just wanted to invite you to reach out if you do want to talk about any of the weeds of all of this. We're looking at, 9 scoring rubrics for 9 different grant programs. It's a lot to discuss in this format, and so I'd be really happy to find chances to speak with you or set you up with staff to speak about things in more detail.
Councilmember Lindstrom.
One quick thing, we've spent a fair amount of time this afternoon talking about the different housing proposals, the home proposals, and I think I remember that came out of the strategic plan from 2020, 2021 timeframe. And we have I think we're re-looking at the next iteration of that in January as a council, the council member retreat. So not really a question, but just kind of a reminder to all of us that here, these things that we've talked about 2-3 years ago are now programs that we're implementing. And I don't know if this next iteration, how that will wrap into, what you're talking about right now. I guess just something for all of us to keep in mind.
Yeah. Good observation, Councilmember Lindstrom. And in the midst of that time frame, there was a little thing called a pandemic.
Indeed.
So thank you. Lisa, any reports?
No, just have a happy holiday and happy New Year, and we'll see you all next year.
Same to you.
Michelle?
I would like to say that the January 2nd Community Development Committee meeting will be canceled. So our first meeting will be Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. And have a nice holiday.
And Michelle's going to be away for a couple months, so we
Yeah.
won't see you until early March?
February, mid-February.
Mid-February,
Yeah,
all right,
mid-February I'll be
okay,
here,
okay.
so.
Yeah, she'll be dancing a jig for us.
There you go.
Got
There
it,
you go.
got it.
Take care.
Thank you all, and with that, this meeting's adjourned.
Good stuff.